that's a huge thing for us is, can we rest? Can we actually think that, okay, I'm going to work as hard as I can to make as much as I can, right? There's that. But then can I stop? Can I realize that doesn't all depend on me or on us to provide an income? Can we just take a break and enjoy our family, enjoy being with the Lord, enjoy his creation, and allow him to, again, be God and do the things that we cannot do?
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest.
You know, as Christians, we are playing with a different set of rules when it comes to money, but we're often still trying to play by the world's rules. It's kind of the basis behind my next two guests, Bob and Linda Lotich. They have SeedTime Money, which is not only a podcast, they have a book, they have a coaching program that they do mainly for churches, but they've really invited everybody into this idea that you can't serve God and money, but you can serve God with your money. I really wanted to have them on, honestly, selfishly, because money is still such a high stress point for me, and it comes in worry and it comes in fear, and I know that. But how do we practically wrap our heads around trusting God more with our money, or trusting God in lack of money? This is a fantastic conversation. It's time to take a listen and to learn more about your money with Bob and Linda Lotich. I am so thrilled to have Bob and Linda Lotich on the show. Thanks, you guys, for being here. The first people to come on and talk about money.
Well, we're excited to be here. We're excited to talk about money. It's a topic that is near and dear to our hearts.
Yes. And it wasn't always that way for me. So if you don't feel that way, it's okay. You're in good hands. We're not gonna get too weird or mathy with it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's interesting because the podcast is all about stress, managing the bad stress and the good stress, and being able to hear the Lord, going from stress to rest, health science, biblical truth. Money's a big stressor. I mean, the two biggest stressors in life are going to be work and relationships, but I feel like money is wrapped up in work and relationships. So it's really, really important to talk about. Part of the reason I wanted to have you on, and I love your book and I love your podcast and your websites and social media. That's how I found you. I feel like I've always had a pretty not real healthy relationship with money in that I'm always worried about it. There's always fear. And that fear leads to stress in so many different places. How does money create stress in somebody's life?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's absolutely accurate. And I think we both would say the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And, we're not the people who are going to pretend like we have it all figured out. Like, we're a work in progress, like everybody else. But we can say that we've watched the Lord bring us through so much, and we've progressed really much further down our journey than we thought possible in terms of getting to a point where we have peace with money. And the way that we define, the whole world is seeking financial freedom, where they have so much money that they never need to worry about it. But the truth is, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you still worry about it.
Yep.
Like, I talk to wealthy people all the time who are more worried than people who are making $30,000 a year. So it's not about the amount of money. And so what we're after is what we call true financial freedom, which is kind of what Paul talked about in Philippians, where he talked about learning how to abase and abound and learning the secret of being content in the high times and the low times. Because there is a level of freedom that comes from that when it doesn't matter what's going on in your financial life, it doesn't matter what's going on in your bank account, where you actually can have assurance and like real assurance and knowing that God is going to provide for you and that he's going to take care of you. And then at the same time, when the income goes up and you actually have a lot of money, that you don't start trusting in that, because that's really easy to do as well. And so that's the freedom that we're after. How do we do that? And so that's been kind of our journey the last 15 years of like moving in that direction, and God taking us on all kinds of ups and downs of having high income and really low income and like crazy roller coaster ride in between. And I think he's been doing that because he's trying to teach us that so that we can hopefully share some of that with others.
Yeah.
I think that's super important because I think I can have, financial experts on or people who talk about money and help people. But if you haven't been in the highs and the lows yourself, like how can you talk to me about it? Right. So give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So I started, long story short, in 2007, I started a blog because I was writing about, basically I was learning about money myself. I was a mess financially and just was kind of sharing what I was learning, but I was also fascinated that the book of Proverbs and the Bible actually talked about money, which I'm like, crazy. This book that's thousands of years old still has relevant information for today. And so that intersection began this blog that I started. And so that was kind of the whole thing began. And then over the years, it turned into a full-time income. And then it turned into a podcast and it turned into a book and it turned into courses and all this stuff. But that's kind of where my journey began with it. Right. And then what? You hopped on it years ago?
So yeah, I mean, what happened for me is like we got married in 2005 and I was kind of like, here's the mess. Please do not involve me. Just tell me what's going on. Give me the Cliff Notes version, And it was sort of like as we started doing some practical things, we started seeing some progress. And I was fully on board with whatever he decided as long as I didn't have to think about it. But he was excited to like take on the mess and sort things out. So, he read every book he could find. I did not. I was like, let me know what you figure out and I will get on board with you. And so through the years after doing this for a while, it was like, okay, I was excited because I saw that what we were doing was paying off. And like literally paying off. And then also I started getting a little bit more curious and he would pull me into things every once in a while and I would kind of go just dragging my feet a little bit. But then once I started seeing actually what God was doing in our lives, that was where I got really excited because I didn't nerd out over making the budget as perfect as it could be. Like I wasn't excited about that. I was bored by it. But once I saw what God was doing, that part really excited me. And I think that's how I got more involved in it. And every once in a while, he'd be like, come on this podcast with me. We're going to talk to a couple. And he, and for a while I thought I don't really have anything to contribute because I didn't remember what a Roth IRA was. But what happened is we started talking about God's faithfulness. And I realized I actually do have a lot of experience in this because we've watched him do it over the years. And so slowly but surely, like I started getting involved with the business, but now like really involved with our finances, which was something like my whole family laughs at me for it, because I'm such an unlikely candidate.
God will use all of us.
Yeah.
Honestly, he really will. And I will just say, side note, when you get the book, like you're such a joyful part of the book and like coming in here and coming in there.
Part,
like I love how it's written that you can like hear you guys,
Oh, good.
There she is, bringing it in, coming in. So it's great. You guys I'll have to get the book. All right. So let's just go right into the hardest part. What do you do when you feel like, oh my goodness, there's not going to be any money at the end of the month?
Yeah. I mean, that's a deep end question. Yeah. So it's like anything else, any other problem that takes years to develop, years of bad habits and whatever else. It's like, it isn't normally we're just going to fix it in 5 minutes. Here's a magic pill. It takes work. You have to work through it. Now, that said, what's super exciting that we experienced on multiple occasions, and we've now had hundreds of students kind of with similar reports, is when you find yourself in this mess. Because like I found myself at that situation with that breaking point, crying out to God, tears coming down, like, how do I get out of this? What's going on? Lord, help, 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 help. So anybody who's been there, like that's a great place to be. That's a great place to start, because I think far too many of us don't invite God into our financial life. And like, we feel like God doesn't care about our money. We feel like that's too low of a thing to pray for.
Right.
Like I've literally shared about certain things on social media and have people comment and say, there's no way God cares about that when there's starving kids in the world. And it's like, yes, he cares about them, but he actually cares about our finances a lot. And the reason why is because when we get it in order, we can help answer those other prayers. You know what I mean?
Well,
when we have the extra finances to help the starving children.
Also, why are we limiting God that he can only care about one thing more than another? I mean, he cares about it all. He cares about it all.
Yeah, he really does. And so anyway, so that's the first step is like legitimately having that moment where you're crying out to God and asking for help. And then the second thing that I think is really important that so often we miss is we pray and then we stop and we listen. What does the Lord have to say? What is he trying to speak to our heart? Because it often is something that seems unlikely, something that's impossible. And so I think back to the story of Elijah and the widow, and he found out Well, would she come to him?
He said, yeah, she said, you need to help me. And he said, what do you have in your house? And she says, I only have a little bit of oil.
Well, she started by saying nothing.
Well, yes, that's right. She started off by saying nothing.
A key point there, because she thought, I don't have anything that matters. Like,
right.
But then finally she admitted, well, it's a little bit of oil, but still, it's never going to be enough. It doesn't matter a lot. But that was the thing that God used to do the miracle. And so often when we're in that situation, it's like just the worst possible situation we can be in. God has an answer. He has a solution. He has a way out. But we have to take the time to pray and to listen to what he has to say. Because like for me, the way out of one of our financial situations was to start a blog. It's like in 2007, no one makes money from a blog in 2007. Like no one even knew what blogs were.
Right.
But yet that was the vehicle that he used to get me out of one particular mess that we got ourselves in. And he's done that over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's really good at taking the thing that seems like it's not enough, that it's insignificant, that it'll never work, and then turn it into something really significant and to provide through it. It's the same way with feeding the 5,000 with the loaves and fishes. It's something that's not enough. It's a joke. Oh yeah, little boy, your loaves and fishes. Yeah, it's going to feed everybody.
That was cute. Yeah.
And then God does, watch what I do when you place this in Jesus' hands.
Right.
So those are the two most important pieces. And we can get into some of the practical stuff, but that's a lot more specific in different directions.
And I would say doing the practical thing too. Like there's a threefold part is like we seek the Lord and then we do as much as we can do. Most people, no, I will speak for myself. I think most people do one or the other. I was the kind of person who would just go, God, help me, God, help me, God, help me. But I would never try to spend less. It was just, God, help me. Just give me what I want. And he's like, I've already given you everything you need. You're just not managing it properly. And so when you are sitting there at the end of the month, you cry out to God first, listen to what he has to say. And then you also do the best with what you have. And I think that combination is actually so powerful and way more powerful than people give it credit for.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. That's all of this. And it's so true. I remember when I was making a big career change and people were like, well, why would you do that? You're not going to have nearly the income. Well, first of all, who says? Because God can do what God will do. Like I have to trust him for it as well. And I had to change my thinking to, okay, the paycheck is what's bringing me the peace, to God can provide the peace that surpasses all understanding no matter what. So even if, I have to sell my house. Okay, I have to sell my house. Oh, we have to downsize and have a smaller life. Okay, we have to do that. Oh yeah, but Kerstin, that's going to hurt. You don't want to do that. You got kids. They're going to be upset with that. Okay, but again, you're limiting God. He can change our mindsets. We could be even happier with less and we can have that peace. We put so many, and especially with money and especially with God, human constraints on things that are not worldly. This is all of heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so good. No, it's so true. Because that's kind of what I was talking about before, like that true financial freedom to where you can go up and down and just be at peace in the midst of it. It's so much more powerful than people realize, because everyone just wants to have all the money because they just think it's going to bring it. And we all know that it's not true, but we want to try it for ourselves just to find out. And it's like, once you go through that, you know that it doesn't solve all the problems. It doesn't relieve peace. And it's like, and there's no doubt that there are some financial situations where it's like, yes, having a little more money will help. But at the end of the day, it is never going to be more or better and more valuable than having the peace of the Lord in that situation. And
100%.
That's what we need to be after.
Yeah. You said ask and then listen. We had Jamie Winship and also Donna Winship, both
one
on
of our
the
heroes.
podcast. Oh my gosh, mine too. Like, I could listen to that guy all day long. And that's
story,
his whole thing. I mean, of, asking God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? And I think that we will say as Christians too, especially like, I'm praying to God all the time. I'm asking him, but we don't take the time to rest in stillness and let him answer. And that's part of the stress piece too, is we're too busy. We're rushing around and we don't have time to stop and let God actually tell us, okay, go grab the oil in the house, or why don't you go grab a loaf of bread and see what I can do? We're too busy with, but how am I going to feed them?
Well, another thing that I just heard him say recently, which was so powerful to me, was he was like, look around you, look at what the situation is telling you. And, it's not it wasn't so much of like, be led by your feelings and be led by what you see, as much as God will put things in your way when you are asking him for an answer rather than, a lightning bolt from heaven where he is speaking to you, a burning bush or anything. That doesn't always happen. I've never seen a burning bush, not one time in my whole life, And so I know that he does things like that, but he doesn't exclusively do things like that. And so just that idea of look around, look at the opportunity being presented to you. Is there something there that you've been missing that you haven't been paying attention to? Like there's something so powerful in, Bob has said, I've never heard someone pray to lose 50 pounds and the next morning they wake up and they're 50 pounds lighter, right? It's usually steps that we take and God puts the wind at our back and just multiplies our efforts. It's usually things like that. And so he uses practical things all the time. It's not, we don't ask for money and then there's just an extra $5,000 in our bank account. It's usually opportunities for us coming our way. And so when we look for those things, when we ask God for those things, or what can I do? Help me, show me what to do next. There's usually something in the natural that is disguised, as something that is on the earth, but it's really God giving us an opportunity to have our prayers answered.
Like Bob said, it could be something that you're like, there is no way.
Most
blog,
times.
And I think it normally
2007.
is.
Yeah.
Because then God gets the glory. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's what's so great about it. Because like, again, we've seen so many people who are in just those dire financial straits or like trying to pay off a ton amount of debt. And like you were just saying, the wind in their back, like that was our story. Every time we tried to pay off a big debt, it's like we would do our part and God would say, all right, I want you to start a budget. I want you to stop spending on the credit card. I want you to do these practical things. We would do that. We would pray. And the spreadsheet would say it's going to take 5 years to pay off the debt. And we would do it in half the time because he came in to support our efforts. But we had to do our part. We had to co-labor with him. We had to do our part and we had to pray and exercise our faith. But that combination, there's something there. There's something there. And we've seen this over and over and over again with our students. So that's what we're after. That's what we're encouraging anybody listening.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you guys like paid off your house in like a record time though, right? Like practically tell us how you
God's
did
story,
that, please.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that was one of those things. So long story short, again, some of these stories are so long, I'm going to shorten them real quick, but I was 31 years old. I'm 44 right now. I just turned 44. So 13 years ago, we were living in St. Louis at the time. I was out on a prayer walk this one particular day. We had paid off all of our credit cards, student loans, cars. Like we're just crushing it. We're just like,
I mean, we had worked towards those goals, right?
We spent a few years working on that and just got all that stuff paid off, and we were feeling great. And like next goal on the docket is pay off the mortgage. So I'm like, I got my eyes set on it. I am like laser focused. All of our extra money's going to pay off this mortgage. And so I decided I'm going to pray and I'm going to ask God to help me pay it off faster. So I'm up in this field all by myself praying, and I'm asking the Lord, God, I want to get this house paid off faster. Like my plan at that point was like 3.5 years. I had on a spreadsheet, it's going to be 3.5 years till we got it paid off with all of the extra couple $1,000s a month we were throwing towards it. And I remember it was one of the clearest things he ever spoke to my heart. Like in the middle of this field, he said, if you really want to see me move on your finances, I want you to begin giving your age as a percentage of your income. And so again, 31 at that time. And I'm like looking up to the sky. I'm like, where did that come from? A weird idea. Where did that come from?
Just a quick background. Like we had always been taught that the tithe was the thing. Like you tithe your money. And above that was kind of like, ooh, you're getting fancy. Let's try.
11%.
Well, that's good for you.
You give 13%. You're a super Christian.
And so even though we kind of had that goal of always wanting to be able to give extra, in our mind, we're going to give extra after we pay off the mortgage or after whatever financial goal gets fulfilled. And so this was sort of, even though we weren't opposed to the idea, it was definitely a stretch for us. We were like, well, that is a lot more than we had budgeted for. That's, further than the plan was.
Well, yeah, and honestly,
right
at that
now.
point, like I'm running numbers in my head and I'm like, I don't even know if we can pay for groceries if we start giving 31% instead of the 10 or 11 we were giving right then. And so I'm doing all this mental math, and then I go through a moment of like kind of being angry at God because like I just came to you praying to pay off my mortgage faster, and now you're telling me to give all my money away. Like, what is this? This is a mess. And anyway, so I'm having to wrestle through all these emotions and thoughts, and I went and asked Linda, and Linda, all of her wisdom said, if God's asking us to do something like this, he probably has something really good on the other side of it. Like, I guess you're right. So anyway, so we started the next month giving 31%. We're going to try this out and see what happens. We're going to do it. And so I go back to my spreadsheet, and now that 3.5 years now is like 10 or 11 years it's going to take us to pay off the mortgage, to which I'm like, all right, that's fine. But like, what was interesting about this thing is I felt, in hindsight, once we kind of got through this, I realized that I had made an idol out of getting our mortgage paid off. Like, and so I had turned, because that's the thing, you can turn any financial goal into an idol, even a really good one, even a biblical one, like paying
Right.
off your debts, And so I had turned that into an idol. And I think that's why the Lord was testing me in this way and seeing, are you going to lay down your idol and you're going to instead give the money away? And so anyway, so my spreadsheet now says 10, 11 years before we get this mortgage paid off. And we went through month 1 and nothing really unique happened. Month 2, it's like our business started doing a little bit better. Month 3, 4, like we had this really big tax refund. And then it's like the business started taking off, and it's like one thing after another. And we found ourselves 9 months later from when we made that decision to start giving 31%, that our mortgage was completely paid off. So it wasn't 10 years, it was less than 10 months.
Yeah.
When we did it God's way instead of our way.
Wow. That's chills. There's people out there right now going, maybe I need to give a little bit more.
Well, I mean, so.
Yeah. And it's not a formula.
Me too.
Like, we're not like trying to prescribe a formula, but we are trying to prescribe obedience to the Lord.
Yeah.
And he didn't ask everyone to give their age as a percentage, but he did ask us. And so we needed to obey. And that was the fruit of it, laying down our idol. And, the thing that was so important to me, God needed to make sure that my relationship with him, my obedience to him, was more important than that. And
so good.
That was the fruit of it. And it's like, I still tickled to death that it happened.
2 questions to follow up with that. One, when you were hearing that because I tend to do this to myself sometimes. Did I really hear God right?
Oh, yeah.
And so was it, I think that the answer was you went to your spouse and Holy Spirit moved in her too. Or did you, even before you went to her, you just knew, no, I'm hearing him right?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's honest knows that sometimes it's, you got to make sure that you're hearing from the Lord, and that sometimes it's like, I think this is God, like that's very, very normal, And so, so that was definitely how I felt as I was praying. But one of the ways I like to think about things when I'm, I was just talking to my 11-year-old son about this last night, as he was trying to determine if he was hearing from the Lord. And one of the questions that I ask, and this is one of many filters that I use to try to identify if it's the Lord, is I ask myself, would this be something that the devil would want? Would the devil plant that thought in my head? And I don't really think that that's something that very often the devil's like, oh yeah, let's get him to be more generous, because he understands the truth of how giving works and sowing and reaping, whatever.
Right.
He doesn't want to see that operate in our lives. And so again, that was maybe one of the first ones that's like, all right, well, I don't think that's, coming from the enemy. Talking to your spouse, of course, like getting other counsel on whatever the thing is. And really just at the end of the day, for me, it's just the peace that I sense. Because there's certain things where it's like, I think on this idea, I meditate on this idea, I pray about it, and it's like, it just doesn't feel like peace. It just doesn't feel right. And then there are certain things where it's like, this is would be a scary situation, but yet I feel some supernatural peace, maybe a peace that passes understanding, where it's like, so that combination of all those things for me is often how I can determine whether or not it's God.
Well, and I was just going to say, unity with your spouse is a big deal. I think I heard somebody say when they were looking at big decisions with their spouse, they would say, if it's a no for one, it's a no for both. And so that's really great. But there's this other side of it where not everybody is married. You don't always have a spouse to like bounce ideas off of. And so when that happens, the thing that I want to point out there is it matters who you talk to. Like, I still think that seeking wisdom is a great idea, but I would not go for the person who's going to tickle your ears. I would go for the person that is going to challenge your faith and help push you forward in the things of God. So just keep that in mind. It matters who you talk to, big time.
Yeah. And one quick case in point there. Another thing, so like we talked about the blog thing, I'll just give you a quick story there. So in 2007, started this blog. 2008, during the financial crisis, I was working for a financial firm, got laid off in that. And I sensed that the Lord was leading me to become a full-time blogger when we were making $100 a month from the blog. Okay. So a terrible idea in the natural, a terrible idea. And so I was really wrestling with that because I really sensed that this was God speaking to me to do this, and it made no sense. And I went to one particular, a financial mentor of mine, and he said, that's a terrible idea. You should never do it. And so back to Linda's point, like I had to get other counsel. I had to figure out who I was talking to, who would be hearing from the Lord, because he wasn't hearing from the Lord. In fact, he wasn't even a believer. And so he was seeing it through the natural lens, but I needed to get counsel from people who could see it through the spiritual lens. And when I did, and then when I felt that peace on the situation and again, like all the pieces coming together, like I felt confident and we felt confident together moving out in that. And again, yet again, like we saw God move in such miraculous ways. I went from making $100 a month on that blog to making more than my day job in less than a year. Again, after we obeyed and did the thing that seems crazy, almost as crazy as whatever, feeding 5,000 with a few loaves and fishes or marching around Jericho and then yelling real loud. It's like God seems to like to do these things. But we got to trust him and take those bold steps, when he calls us.
For sure. Let's go back to the tithing part, because my husband and I have always said, we just tithe and it just works out. Like it just does. Like even in the worst situations, we don't stop tithing. God always provides. More and more I've been reading and then listening to you guys, so it's coming up again, that it's not tithing 10% necessarily. It's tithing on what like you're expecting even. Like you're giving the first of what's not even there. Like what is your take on tithing? And I know it's such a hard subject for people too.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot here too.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about this is I have been hearing a lot more recently. Like I feel like it keeps coming up of, that is like the first fruits idea, right? Is that I think the Jewish culture did that, where they gave whatever was the first, like actual first fruits that would come up. And I was
expecting that more fruit would come.
Yes.
Right? Not just they had all this and they gave some, but then we're going to give this first one and then we haven't gotten the rest of the stuff yet.
Right. So they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know if they're going to have enough. They don't know if they're going to have enough to sell or to, live on it themselves, however that worked out. But what I thought was interesting about that is now, since we don't have that first fruits, like actual, like coming from land or farming or whatever, I've heard that instead what they do is at the beginning of the year, they decide what they would like to see money come in and they give based off of that, which I was like, this is a wild concept that is based out of the Jewish law. And when you look at the way God does things, like everything in the Torah, like the original law that God created, of course, we don't have to live by that anymore. And he still blesses us and we can still receive salvation and all that stuff because Jesus came to fulfill the law. But everything that was there was set up for our benefit. Like there are things that were set up for us that would make our lives better and our lives easier. And I think that this could be one of them. I was even talking to my dad about it because, he was telling me some of these ideas and he's put some of it into practice. And he's like, I can't believe what's happening. And I said, I wonder if you could push that farther. I wonder if you could say, oh, I'm going to actually give more than, this first fruits idea. Could I give more, hoping and praying and asking God? Because there is just the law of sowing and reaping. Like that just is what it is. Like God set it as a law and he said it would always remain. As long as the earth remains, there will always be seed time and harvest. So I don't know. I mean, I think this is fascinating. I like talking about it because I think it's really interesting because it's not something that we can we can't make it happen. Only God can make it happen. And I think that's what's exciting to me about it.
Yeah. I mean, what I would add to that is, again, we're not trying to sound like 80s, televangelists, and whatever that is, whatever picture you have of that. But
right.
But there is something here because my two go-to chapters in the New Testament when it comes to giving are 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. And 2 Corinthians 9 is all about planting seeds and harvesting. And Paul is using it as a metaphor for giving. So he's talking about all these principles about giving and generosity and the harvest that comes. Mm-hmm. And it's like, he didn't have to do that, but that's such an easy concept for us to understand. And it's like, when we think about it that way, it's like, oh, well, if you want to reap more, you plant more seeds. Like it's really elementary and very simple, but yet so many of us want to disconnect it that way. And it feels like a little bit too bold to do maybe what you're talking about, where it's like, we're going to start giving more because we need to earn more. But like the truth in our life, we've experienced this so many times. And like we just told you when we were paying off the mortgage, we multiple times, it was like that, where we had a financial goal we were trying to reach, trying to pay off a car or whatever else. And God's like, I want you to give more. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Why would you give more when you need more money to do this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is something about the kingdom and the way that it works that is present. But at the same time, like there has to be a loose hand to where, again, you're not trying to manipulate God like he's your genie, and like, in which of course isn't going to work, but still, I think immature Christians can try to do that. And so there's something there about being loose-handed with it.
Even mature Christians can try to do that.
Yeah,
for sure.
But there's something there about being loose-handed and allowing him to do it his way while operating within his principles that he established and set from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm super convicted in our conversation because I'm the one who does the bills, and I'm super, I don't know, is that type A or whatever side of the brain that is, where I'm like, down to the penny. Okay, I need your, not your net, I need your gross. I need down to the penny how much we're supposed to give, because we're supposed to give 10%. And we have, and like I'm spreadsheets and things like that. And part of me is going, you know what, you just need to give, like just give what, when it comes up or at the end of the month, or when you do it, just give what is on your heart to give. And if we walk down that road, just kind of like what you said, the worst thing that could happen is you're over generous. And maybe that's not the worst thing for you, but the worst thing is, oh my goodness, we don't have a whole lot of money at the end of the month. But then if we go back to the very beginning principle that you talked about, okay, but that's when you trust God. Right.
Yeah.
So worst case scenario, you're over giving or you're being super generous and you're trusting God. That doesn't sound like a very bad thing.
Well, and he rewards us for trying. You know what I mean? Like, how many times in school have my kids been like, I did so horrible. And I'm like, but did you try? Did you try your best? It's like, I don't care if you're not an expert at, drawing a portrait. I care if you tried. If you didn't try, then okay, let's have another conversation. But if you are trying your best, and I think that's how it is for us. It's like when we are trying to please him and trying to do our best, we're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. Like, it doesn't matter that much as long as we are giving our best effort to God and saying, Lord, take what I have. Even if I'm making a mistake, can you just help me fix this?
Yeah,
help me fix it.
Like, that's one of the most common patterns, especially in the New Testament with money, is always comes back to our heart. So it's always about our heart.
Yeah.
So he's looking at our heart. He's looking at our motivations. And again, when we make those mistakes, it's like he sees what we're trying to do.
Right.
And I love it because when we go back to, okay, but yeah, he knows your heart. Are you trying to manipulate? Like, and this should not be a therapy session for me, but sometimes it turns into that, and when I look at, okay, I left this big corporate job because God said, it's time for me to use you in a different space and trust me. And never in my life, had a job since I was 14. And I went from one job to the next job. And it took me a long time to trust him and just like, okay, I'm going to step out. And over again, it's been like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then the cloud just comes up and I don't know what's going to happen. And then he's just there. Right. Yeah. But if I think, okay, I'm going to give over and above because I want the cloud to come, that's not necessarily it. But if I think I want to give over and above because I want to work on that part of my heart that is so worried that the cloud's not going to come.
Yeah. Right.
So it's a small difference, but it's a difference between manipulating God and then kind of like you said about your kids, just wanting to learn.
Yeah.
Wanting to learn how to not have the fear and that hold and making money an idol. Because that's stress right there when you're making money an idol.
Yeah. And most people think that it's not. You know what I mean? Like there's this idea. There's this idea that if I work to make this happen, and if I give it everything I have, and if I just desperately claw my way, out of this whole, like, Jesus came to give us peace. Like he says, come to me if you are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. There is the scripture that says, cease striving and know that I am God.
Oh, yes. I love that.
I like that version of it.
I love that version of it too.
Yes. Cease striving. Because to me, I have done that before where I'm like, if I can just fill in the blank, then it'll be okay. And God's like, no, if you can trust me. And I keep saying to myself, I'm going to put him in his place and everything else in its place. If I can just keep God at the head, at the top, at the very top, and everything else flows down from it, then it will be okay, because that is the truth of the word of God. That's what he's told us. Make him God, make him, there should be no other gods above him, none next to him. Everything goes under, right? And so when we fix our eyes on Jesus and understand that he is the Prince of Peace, he is Jehovah Jireh, which we just did a podcast on that. Honestly, if you listen to our podcast, I'll listen to that one. And Jamie Winships. Those were two great ones. But
always.
Yeah. But the one about Jehovah Jireh was that it's like the word Jehovah Jireh means that it's the God who sees, and he sees to it. And so it's like this idea that he sees what's going on in our lives. He sees what's going on in our hearts, and he's going to see to it that he solves these problems for us. I mean, it's beautiful when you understand it. And I think that that's something that we don't do often enough, is realize that God is seeing what's going on, and he is going to help us. He sent the Holy Spirit as the helper. So, more and more, I just keep pushing stuff back on God and not taking everything on myself. Surely there's a responsibility I have, but my first responsibility is to seek him.
Right. That's what he's waiting for. He's waiting for you to be with him, to wait with him. He's right there. He's just like, okay, are you ready yet? Or are you just going to stay striving? Or are you going to let me be here?
We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good.
I do not really have much makeup on, a little bit of lip gloss, and my absolute favorite, Dr. Deness Skin Science. This is her Tinted Defense Day Cream SPF 40. You can see by my bottle that I use it every single day, and this is the supersized bottle, which is what you absolutely need. It gives me the protection that I need because it has SPF. It gives me the blur because it has those pigments. But most importantly, like all of Dr. Deness's skincare products, they actually work. She uses the most of the efficacious ingredients, and they're all clean. I wouldn't talk to you about anything in your skincare or your beauty that wasn't clean beauty. This brand really has changed my skin. Listen, I'm 47 years old. I need a little extra help. I'll tell you where to start. Other than the skin defense, you're going to need Hydro Shield. Oh my goodness, the hydration. It has changed my deeply dehydrated life and makes it look like perhaps I got all the sleep and I have no stress and I didn't cry in the bathroom after my kids went to sleep at night. It really, really works. Everything does. And with clean beauty. And because we want you to have your own midlife glow up and be able to be, I don't know, maybe makeup free from time to time like I am right now. Dr. Deness has given you a little something off. Go to drdeness.com and use the code StRest. That's STREST for a discount. You'll thank me later. Now back to the show. All right. You, in the book, there's 4 different parts. So there's save, earn, give, enjoy. Mm-hmm. Why the 4 parts? Can you give me a little bit on those?
Yeah. So we stole a framework from John Wesley. And so John Wesley had this quote, and he's actually written about this a lot. And so John Wesley doesn't know, old, I guess, 18th century preacher, 19th century preacher. Anyway. And so he said, and I love this, he said, I earn as much as I can, and then I save or reduce my expenses as much as I can so that I can give as much as I can. And so he was a preacher, but yet he sought to earn as much as he could, which a lot of people would be like, that's weird, but the reason he did is, again, ultimately so he could give as much as he could. And so he was traveling all around, and I did some research, and it turns out he was actually one of the, had the highest incomes in all of England at the time when he was around, by writing and preaching all the time, like on horseback. It was crazy. But the point is that he sought to make as much money as he could because he knew that he would be able to advance the kingdom by the work that he did, but then also by the byproduct of that, the money that he earned, he could then give and then impact the kingdom as well. And so we've just always loved that quote, and that's kind of been our philosophy. Mm-hmm. So we built a book around that while adding in the, I think, necessary piece of being able to enjoy, because God has, gifted us with things for us to enjoy, right? That's scriptural, that's biblical. And so it's okay that we enjoy things. It's okay that we're not living like paupers. But at the same time, we should never be bowing to mammon. We should be serving the Lord above all else. And so that's kind of the reason behind that 4-part framework.
Well, and also it's like you can enjoy your work. You can enjoy working for the Lord. You can enjoy reducing your expenses. Like there can be a game in there. And then you can also enjoy giving, which, I think there's a lot of stingy givers. And the Bible talks about that. He doesn't want that for us. It's not that he's like, you better not do this. It's more that he's like, oh, I just have a better way. Do you want to do it the better way? Or are you happy just doing it that way? And I love that is an invitation. And so we felt like, adding that enjoy part, plus there's a whole other element of rest involved in that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked much in the book about that, but that's a huge thing for us is, can we rest? Can we actually think that, okay, I'm going to work as hard as I can to make as much as I can, right? There's that. But then can I stop? Can I realize that doesn't all depend on me or on us to provide an income? Can we just take a break and enjoy our family, enjoy being with the Lord, enjoy his creation, and allow him to, again, be God and do the things that we cannot do?
And that's a big piece of stress too that I talk about. It's hard to trust that you can stop, that you can slow down and take a break, and the world's going to keep spinning. And because it's not you, you're not God.
Wow.
He can do it without you.
We've had,
Has, right?
Yeah.
One of the things the Lord, again, probably 11 years ago or something, basically invited us to start taking a 1-month sabbatical, walking away from work for a month. And we did that one time.
Every year.
Been doing it every year, and did that one time. And I'm like, God, this was so incredibly beneficial for me on a spiritual level, on a family level, on a business level, on a like almost every level, personal, social, like all of it. Just so beneficial. I'm like, Lord, if we could do this every month, I would love to do this for the rest of my life. That'd be amazing. And by his grace, every year. But we've been able to do that for pretty much every year since. And we've seen that. Like there's something in that rest, that intentional rest, that, man, it just seems to ignite something. And he's proven that to us, exactly what you just said, to where it doesn't depend on us. Because one of those first ones that we did, again, like I walked away from the business, and I'm so nervous. Like, I don't know if we're going to have a business when we get back. I don't know if the whole thing's going to burn down. Like, I was just so nervous about it. And yet we got back from it, and we ended up making more money during that month that I didn't work at all than we had all the previous months of the year.
Explain that.
And it's like God was just showing me, like, you're not as important as you think you are. And I'm like, I don't even know why I go to work. Like, what's the point?
Right.
But obviously we didn't work, but you get the point. Like, he was just showing me, he's like, this isn't about you. Like, I got it. And I've been studying this chapter, Joshua 10. And at the end of it, there's a verse where it basically said the Lord helped Joshua defeat all of these different armies and all these different kings and conquer their lands in a single campaign. And he did it because the Lord was fighting for his people. So it wasn't about Joshua. Like, Joshua just got to be part of what he was doing, but God had a work that he was trying to do. And Joshua just got to be part of it because he was a humble and available vessel. But it was really, God was the one who's doing the work. He was the one who stopped the sun in the middle of the sky so they could finish the battle. He was the one, another verse in that chapter said that they were fighting this one army, and there was a hailstorm, and more soldiers were killed by the hailstorm than Joshua's army. And it's like, God is at work. He's the one who's bringing it to pass, but we just need to get along with him and allow him to do what he's doing.
And I know that these are stories you're like, yeah, well, that happens to them. It doesn't happen to me. I get that. But I think, COVID's an instance that we all saw it, right? Things were happening in the world. You're like, how is this ever going to work out? How is anything ever going to happen? And then all of a sudden COVID hit and the entire world changed. And for some people, it was for the better. And for some people, it started a new business for them. And I mean, God can do anything at any time. We do not want another global pandemic, but we all saw things can change in a second. Just because your brain can't figure out what's going to happen next, if I take a month off, what's going to happen, doesn't mean that God doesn't have it already taken care of.
Yeah. And, the other piece of that too is like, I did see so many people where it was like God worked things out in an incredible way. And it's like, we ended up having more money than before,
So many people.
During COVID, yes.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I also saw the opposite where it was just
Yeah.
like, how are we going to do this? And I think that the one thing that, it's easy for us to get on here and tell of all the amazing things that we've seen happen. But there are a lot of real struggles that we have faced and that I know others are facing, like financial challenges where it's just like,
Yeah. And we can tell all those stories too.
yeah, we could tell those stories too, where it's like, this is not working out how I thought it would work. And we have a lot of them. Maybe a year and a half ago, I remember looking at Bob being like, how are you not freaking out right now? Like
I do that to
was
my husband all the
freaking out.
time. Why aren't you worried about this? He's like, well,
Yeah.
you're worried enough for both of us.
Right.
That's a great answer.
Well, and Bob's answer to me was, I've seen how God does this. He works it out every time. And there is something about God wants us to trust him. And if we're saying, I want to trust you more, I want to know you more, we're singing the songs at church on a Sunday morning. But then when the rubber hits the road, right? It's like, do you actually mean it? Because he's going to give you an opportunity for those things to happen.
Yeah.
And when they happen, what is your response? And I'm telling you, I have found more, I almost want to say joy. I've found almost more joy in my relationship with God when I have walked through the awful, awful, awful stuff. Because there's something new that I learn about him that I can't learn about him when everything is going my way. And I don't think that this is something that we should gloss over, of that it is real, that there is suffering in the world, that things happen that God never intended for them to happen. However, I do believe that verse that says what the devil meant for harm, God is going to use for good. And the reason he's going to do that is because, again, he loves us so much that even though the world did not go the way he had originally planned, he knew it was going to happen all along, but he had originally planned for us to be in that garden and just be with him all the time. And as soon as we said no to that plan, he decided, I'm not going to let it be that the enemy is going to ruin everything in your life and that I'm not going to turn things around for your good. And so I think that as I've had to grow in this myself, that as I walk through those difficult situations, I tether myself to the Lord. And I can see where he is moving in the nasty, awful situation that I'm in. And it is so good that way. It makes my dependence on him so much stronger. And I see him in a new way that I had never seen him before. And so when that happens, I can for sure be like, that was not me. I cannot take the credit for that, because if I didn't have him working on my behalf, I know where I would be, and it would be a big fat mess, and I'd be mad, and I'd be making everyone else mad around me, But man, when we tether ourselves to him, it's one of my favorite things that I've learned about him in the last few years, is that walking through hardships with him and seeing how he works things out and seeing the little things that he does throughout the whole journey and the fruit that comes out of it on the other side is so sweet. It's so sweet.
Well, that's what he's doing. I mean, that's when we allow him to shine, right? When you fall down, when it's so hard that you can't get back up, he's like, okay, great. Finally. Thank you. Now let me show you what I can do.
Yeah.
Because you're done trying. You're done striving.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's so true. And we will, as Christians, a lot, singing the songs, wearing the shirts, faith over fear, and all of that. And but then behind the scenes, we're manipulating and controlling, and we're looking at October and going, okay, this is how this is going to work. There's that verse in James, where, who do you know? How do you know what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right.
Who are you to say, I'm going to move to such and such a place and make money in this place? You don't know what's going to happen. We're a vapor.
Right.
But so often we want to control it all. And there's that whole idea that there's not even, God, control is not a word of the Lord. It's not a thing.
Yep.
That's amazing. I love hearing that.
I wrote this down and I'm not sure if it's about never 100 rule.
Yes.
Is that a thing? Tell me. I apparently liked it.
Yeah. So, we talk about this early in the book. And so it's a concept that we talk about a lot. But we were a mess financially, like I said. And so we found, like when we looked at it, we determined the problem that we had, and that really everyone has, is that we were just spending more money than we had coming in. Okay. So that's kind of obvious. But at the same time, once I realized that Mike Tyson made $400 million and not only spent it all in a matter of 7 years, but actually ended up $23 million in debt. So spent $423 million when he had 400 million. And it's like, all right, well, maybe he's just crazy. But then I went and looked at the average NBA player. I think it's like 60 something, 70% of NBA players are broke within 2 years of retiring. Most of those guys making at least $1 million a year.
Crazy, right?
Average NFL player is the same way. Half of them have gone bankrupt or are broke just within 3 or 4 years after retiring. And so, and yet, and all these guys are, making at least close to $1 million. I think the average might be a little bit less in the NFL or something. But the point is like way more than the average American salary.
Yeah.
And yet, most of us are going to bed each night just thinking, well, if I just had a little bit more money, it's like it would all work out. And it's like there's something there. It's not just about the more money. It's about what do you do with the more money, right? And it's really easy to just not do wise things with the more money when it comes in. Anyway, so the point is you have to have some sort of plan for the money that it comes in. And so that was one of our earliest things that we did that really helped a lot. We just created this rule that we call the Never 100 rule, where it's like we're never going to spend 100% of the income that comes in a given month. And so whether it was $10,000, $1,000, or $100 a month that we earned, we're not going to spend 100% of it. Okay. Because the reality is if we only earn $100 in a month, it doesn't matter what we do with it. Like it's not going to solve the problem. Right.
Right.
And so the question is, well, what do you do if you don't spend 100%? Well, then we're giving some and we're saving or investing some. And so the giving piece, kind of like we were talking about before, 2 Corinthians 9, this idea of it being planting seeds, like that's something that we always wanted to do. We always want to be planting seeds. We always want to be giving our first fruits. We always want to be getting that cycle in motion, no matter what's happening in our specific financial life. Because again, if we have $100 that comes in a given month and we give away $10 of it, we have 90 left. That's not going to solve the problem. Like we have a big problem no matter what, whether it's 90 or 100,
right.
And whatever those numbers are, just adjust them for what your reality is. So the point is that one specific rule was just a simple framework for us to just kind of maintain controls, because it's easy in desperation when, again, we have this super low month where we don't have enough money coming in to be like, well, we need to control every single dollar and we need to make sure it goes to buying groceries and paying the electric bill and all these different things. And we're not at all saying don't do that, but
yeah, because there is something right about that. Like we are supposed to manage what we have, right?
But what I am saying, and what I do think is really important for us and anyone who wants to listen and take this for themselves, is it was really good for us to be in a consistent pattern of giving, whether our income was up or down, because we've had very little consistent income over the last 15 years. It's just been up and down all over the place. And so that developed a pattern of giving in our lives that we still gave when it was really far down. We still saved when it was really far down. And so then when it comes up, it's like, of course we can do it. And then anyway, so it just worked out a whole lot better for those reasons.
Yeah. What do you guys say about, the financial advisors will be like, have 3 months worth of money saved for a rainy day. Like, do you work in that?
Yeah. I mean, that's great. Yeah. It's a great idea. Like, but like the reality is like most people listening are like, I don't have $1,000 saved, so, and that's the reality. And I'm more interested in the reality of everyday people rather than like these random things that financial experts say that you should do that 99% of people are never going to do. 99% of people are never going to have 6 months saved up. And they say 3 to 6 months saved up. So yeah, it's a great idea. And it's like, if you can do it, go ahead and do it. And I don't think there's any harm in like shooting for that. But again, like so many of these rules, these modern day financial rules that we created, they're trying to create security without God. And it's like, it's never going to do it. Like you're not going to build an emergency fund that's going to make you feel secure enough that it's like, I don't need God. And even if it does, that's a problem. If you get to that point, you're like, I don't, so like, I'm not the biggest fan of all the like rules of thumbs, and it's because again, I don't think Proverbs makes it clear that yes, we should be saving money. There's one proverb says in the house of the wise are stores of oil. And, and it's the point is like having extra resources and not consuming it all is valuable and good. You look at Joseph, God instructed him to save 20% for the upcoming famine that was coming. Like, so there's wisdom in that, but like getting down to the nuts and bolts of whether it's 1 month or 3 months or 6 months, like, I don't know. I don't really love the one size fits all personal finance advice.
Yeah. And I'll use me as be very vulnerable as an example. I was that person who was like, okay, we have the 3 months saved, like in case there's a rainy day or something like that. And it
We've been
doesn't
there
give me
too. Like
security.
we're
It
with
doesn't-
you. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't give me security. It doesn't.
yeah.
I look at that and go, but then we have to use it, So I have
yeah.
to turn around and then again turn back to God, and then I have to go to my heart. Would be like, okay, so you're giving this number in a bank more security than the Lord,
Yeah.
right? So
So
that's
good.
where you go. You go back to that. Then what do you? This is probably the same answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. What about you? Have kids? How many kids do you have? Three
Yeah.
kids. So
Little kids.
do you probably don't get nervous about college? Because that's one of the things that I'm always like, well, God's going to figure out college, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we can go there if you want, but like we started 529s for them. We actually started Roth IRAs for them. I'm a little bit more interested in funding their Roth IRA than their 529 at the moment. We don't need to turn this into a conversation about education, but I'm not particularly, if I had my way, our kids wouldn't go to college.
Yeah.
Now, if they're showing, like one of them wants to become a lawyer or something, it's like, all right,
Or a
you need to go to
doctor,
college.
yeah.
But so I'm going to follow them and their lead on it, whatever. But we're not making a huge, massive push towards college
I
savings
think
right
a better way to say that is we're more excited about education that will put them forward in the giftings that God has for
now.
them.
Yes, that's a better way to say it.
Yeah,
That's great.
because like we don't have a problem with
Regardless of
college.
what the
But like there are people who go to college because they literally are just told they should go to college and they have no plan and
No,
they
I
have
agree.
it's not going to apply to their lives. And so, if our one son is so interested in like homesteading and, maybe being a farmer, and we're like, you don't need to get a college degree for that.
Yeah.
How old is he? Because I have a daughter for him. I'm just saying.
11. Okay. Yeah.
That's big.
We'll do this.
She's 15. It's not too far off. 'cause
Not too
she's
far
like
off.
right there too.
Maybe in a few years.
Yeah,
that
if
get
you-
chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, well, let's get him volunteering at a horse barn. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, let's
Well-
push him in that direction rather than being like, well, you better put in your 4 years at college before you do anything that the Lord you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and let me finish that thought. So I graduated with my 4-year degree that I paid a lot of money for and didn't get much use out of after I graduated. So I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. But my number one goal for our kids from an education perspective is that they enjoy learning and enjoy reading when they're done with school. Because if I look at everything that has been beneficial for my life, especially in terms of business, after I graduated from college, it's all been from reading books. And, and not like books at college, but in $15 books that I bought off of Amazon from experts who are actually doing the thing I'm trying to learn about. And so I want our kids to have that. And that's like my number one thing. I want them to be lifelong learners. I want them to enjoy reading. Because again, for me, school beat that out of me too. It took me many, many years to enjoy reading again after I graduated from school. So anyway, there's our tangent on education.
There's a philosophy.
But and that it all goes back to kind of your overarching, even if you are that person who was like, nope, I have to have the 529 and I've got to save for college. The root of where that comes from. If you're saving for college, is that because you're finding your safety and control in a number in an account? It doesn't matter if it's a college account, if it's a savings account, if it's a retirement, if it's account, if it's,
That's true.
whatever it might be.
All the same. Yeah.
What do you do if your spouse isn't on board? I think there's a lot of people out there either don't have a spouse or they're the ones who are really, maybe they like to tithe, maybe they are really all about this, but then they have a spouse who's just kind of the opposite. How do you, other than just praying?
Yeah. There's a couple different pieces here, but yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, I actually think that, why are they not on board? I think that's the first question you need to ask. Are they not on board because they think different than you? Or are they not on board because they fundamentally disagree with everything you believe? So like not everyone is a believer who is married to a believer. Like there's sometimes there's disunity in that, area, which I personally do not have any experience with. And I've encourage marriage counseling and some other counseling that, of people who know what they're talking about. I've seen more than I have. Okay. So I'll start with that. However, I believe that God put the two of us together for a reason. And there are times where our opinions are polar opposites. You know what I mean? And that is there for a reason. And sometimes it is because one of us is out of alignment and the other person needs to pull us back. Like if Bob's like, we need to be putting aside some money, this is unwise how we're living. And I'm like, no, let's spend it all. Usually there's this idea of, okay, I am actually treating spending as my idol and he needs to pull me back in the direction of, let's do the thing that's wise. Let's do the thing that actually lines up with what the Bible says, but it happens on the other side too. Like, this is not just a one way, like he's right and I'm wrong, which is what I thought at the beginning, because he was the one that had everything organized and that saw everything. I thought that I just was wrong all the time. But I really do believe that the two of us together make something right and bring us into alignment with what God has for us, so that there's not just one person's opinion ruling everything. And I think,
Well, yeah, let me add to that. Because like, it's easy if you're, so I'm more of the math person. I'm more of the spreadsheet person. She's just more of the, whatever, more creative, more free in her spending and
Spender,
everything else
yeah,
like that. And so it's easy for the person like me to look at the math and just be like, this is black and white. It's right or it's wrong. And so if I create a budget and I say, here, hon, this is what we're doing, and she thinks it's wrong and I think it's right, it's like, I'm just right. This is math. You can't argue math,
yeah,
But the truth is that, and I felt like the Lord revealed this to me, that like she was saying, she has a value to add to our financial picture, to our spending and everything else that supersedes math. And it took me a little bit to get that. But when you understand that God created her with intentionality for the reason that he did, and that her desire to spend actually is beneficial for me and for our marriage as a whole,
and
like
for
that,
the thing that God has called us to do, why we're on the earth, right?
like, so that was just a really helpful aha and insight for me to get from the Lord, that just required some humbling, but it's just true, and it's like, I mean, if you see it just through that black and white lens, then you're just really going to miss out on a lot of, I think, the benefits of having a healthy, balanced marriage in that regard.
And I mean, I think the first thing that, when you come together with your spouse and you're like, every time we talk about this, it turns into a fight. I think a great first step is to say, okay, have a conversation about the conversation.
At a good time.
How are we going to talk about this without fighting? Because every time we get together, it seems like we get all these emotions. What are your emotions about it? How can I help with that?
All right, let me step back. I want to make sure this is understood. So have a conversation about the conversation. Don't have the conversation.
Right.
You have a conversation about the conversation when
Before we have this conversation, let's talk about this.
So and when everybody's smiling and happy and had a glass of wine or whatever, it's like, hey, we have a really hard time talking about money. We're not going to talk about money right now, but how could we talk about it in a way? How could we get over this where we could actually do it? Like, what do you suggest? How can we talk about it? And then you talk about that so that you have a game plan when you go into the conversation next time, because a lot of us are in marriages where we bring up the topic and immediately turns into a fight because that person just triggers, responds, whatever. So we have to figure out how to break that cycle if you're in that pattern, right? And so that has been one thing that we found to be very, very helpful.
Yeah. And praying before it.
Of course.
I mean, absolutely. Yes. But I think that's even as I'm in a household full of Christians, I'll be doing bills on the 15th and the 30th, and I'll be like, what's this? I won't stop, pray about it before I go talk to my husband about it, or have the conversation before the 30th, going like, probably going to have, because it happens every 15th and 30th. I'm like defensive or something. Yep. So maybe on the 10th, I should be like, next time we talk about it, can we pray first? And
right.
It's so easy to forget. Like, that's what's so, I mean, I'm sure it's a ploy of the enemy, but man, if we really understood that, like, everything in our lives, like, God wants to be involved in, he wants to help out with, and we just need to talk to him and listen.
Last question I ask everybody on the podcast: what's one thing that everybody can do to help reduce stress? Like right away, what's a small change or something they can do today, tomorrow?
All right, I'll talk specifically with finances. So one thing that we take almost all of our students through is, if you think about like a food journal, you go to a nutritionist and they say, all right, I want you to write down everything that you are eating. Okay. So if you've ever done this, anybody who's done this, you know that as soon as you start writing it down, you start eating better. I literally did this with my time. I was reading a book. He talked about doing this with their time. I started writing down every 15 minutes how I was using my work day. I'm like, there's no waste in here. I am on it. Like, I don't get distracted. I don't go watch YouTube or Instagram. And like, I started writing it down. It's like, oh, I didn't know that, and then I'm like, I don't want to write that down. And you start actually seeing it. It's the same way with our money.
Yeah.
Okay. So doing that task of literally writing down everything you spend, okay, which is a daunting task for some, but if you do that, you're going to spot waste. And as you do, if you feel like it's paycheck to paycheck all the time, it's going to bring a decent amount of stress relief. And this is the super practical side, but it's going to help when you start seeing, man, there's actually a few $100s a month that I might be wasting or spending on things that I actually don't need. And that's incredibly powerful. So writing it down. The other way to do this a little more electronically There's an app that we like called Rocket Money that will do this. So you can go in there and plug your credit cards in and do this as well. And so that's a pretty simple process.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I'll just give one piece of advice for people who are kind of like, yeah, I've already, like, they're a little more advanced, right? And they have a budget. Things are balancing out fairly well at the end of the month. One thing that Bob and I did that honestly reduced a lot of stress in our marriage is we got our own spending money. So, it works a little bit like an allowance, but it's an agreed upon amount that each of us get. And I can spend that money, I mean, obviously within reason, any way I want. If I want to go get myself a milkshake one day, he's not going to be like, why are you spending our grocery money on the milkshake? You know what I mean? Like, or a new pair of shoes or whatever else. And if he wants to buy his fifth saw, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? Rather like something that is important to him, but I don't want to spend my money on.
Yeah.
Like having just this freedom to be like, I just am going to buy this today. This makes sense for what for my day or for what I need or whatever. And it stops fights.
It was a game changer for us.
It was a game changer.
Wait, do you do that with cash or like a gift card, or is it still tracked like in Quicken or Rocket Money?
Separate accounts. Okay. So literally joint accounts. Okay. So we both have our name on it. It's not hiding money from your spouse.
I mean, it's a line item on our budget.
Yeah.
Right.
So the point is that they're separate accounts and you can just have your own. You can actually have a separate debit card for each one, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that it's separated out. Each month she gets $300, I get $300 to spend however we want. No judgment.
Right.
And it reduced so many fights. It brought so much peace because before, like you were mentioning before, it's like we have it all in one big bucket. And then she goes and buys 6 milkshakes from Chick-fil-A in a week. And I'm like, dude, you're wasting all of our money. So I kept getting angry.
Right.
That's my husband.
Yeah.
Why did you go to Wawa for coffee 3 times today? Like, really?
But once you segment that out, like you define, he gets this amount of much to waste on stupid stuff, however much he wants, then you don't care about it anymore. And it provides so much freedom.
Because he gets to spend it however he wants. I mean, this is a big one. And please understand what I'm saying is this is not like hiding things from your spouse.
No.
That's not what I'm talking about.
If there's something like that in your marriage, then maybe this is not the solution for you and you need to do something different, like have some therapy and work through this before you get to that point.
That's beyond our scope. Yeah.
I always felt like doing that was like we're giving each other allowances and that's not cool. But you guys are kind of freeing me up that no, this is probably a good idea because it will honestly just reduce the stress that I have on the 15th and 30th. And then his stress from me talking to him about it.
Exactly. And who cares if it is allowance? So like, who cares? Why does it matter?
I've never thought we've been doing this for 15 years. I've never once been like,
no,
I've never felt weird about it. Like, I just feel good about it.
The other thing is we all still spend, like both of us still spend money out of the other, budgeting accounts or whatever. So it's like, we're both buying groceries where, it's not that. It's kind of just like the fun stuff. You want to go golfing? Here's your money. You can spend all of this. You can spend every dime, however you want to spend it. And that is just really freeing. Because then we don't have to have those conversations of like, I really need this pair of shoes for this wedding. Yeah. He's just like, he doesn't care at all.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It minimizes conversations. It's just been really good.
Yeah.
Would like it if you two adopted me. Because I have so many more questions.
We can chat anytime.
Yeah. This has been absolutely wonderful. Okay, tell people where to find you and really how you can help them. You not only do you have the book, you have courses, coaching. What do you do?
Yeah. So we have a podcast, SeedTime Money, for anybody who likes podcasts. Mm-hmm. We have a 6-week financial course that we have a bunch of churches all over the United States going through. So that's a common way a lot of people are getting us. We have a book like you talked about. It's called Simple Money, Rich Life. We actually, we have a free plus shipping offer on it if anybody wants it. You go to seedtime.com/free, and then you can get the book for free if you can just cover shipping. Happy to send that your way. And we're on Instagram at SeedTime. And let us know. Send us a DM. Love to chat.
So blessed by you guys. Thank you so much. God bless your family and your company and everything that you're doing. Thank you for blessing my audience.
Of course. It's an honor. Thanks for
Thank you.
Us to share.
I truly got so much out of that conversation with Bob and his wife, and also reading their book. that I felt like we needed a little bit of a follow-up. So coming up on the next episode of StRest, we're going to talk all about tithing. I'm going to give you some more biblical principles behind it and where we see it in scripture. But I'm really going to do kind of a vulnerable look at how it's worked in my life and what I truly believe when it comes to tithing. And also, since that conversation with Bob, which is now a couple of months old, some things that have changed in my life that I've used from him to help me in tithing and some of my takeaways there as well. So I know it's a very sensitive discussion, tithing is, but it's a very important one to have. So coming up on the next episode of StRest, we talk all about tithing. Don't miss it.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.